The divorce papers sat on the kitchen table like a slap across the face. Zara Thompson stared at the legal documents, her hands trembling as she heard her husband Richard loading suitcases into his BMW outside. 3 days. It had only been 3 days since they buried his father Harold, and here was Richard, packing up their 7-year marriage like it was nothing more than old clothes he no longer wanted. "Richard, what is this?" Zara called out, her voice barely steady as she stepped onto the porch. Her beautiful brown skin looked pale in the morning light, her dark eyes filled with confusion and hurt. Richard didn't even look up from cramming his golf clubs into the trunk. "It's exactly what it looks like, Zara. I'm leaving." "Leaving? Your father just died 3 days ago. We just buried him. How can you be thinking about leaving right now?" Finally, Richard turned to face her. The man she had loved for nearly a decade looked at her with cold, empty eyes. "Because I don't have to pretend anymore." Zara felt like the ground was moving beneath her feet. "Pretend what?" "That I love you. That this marriage means anything to me." Richard slammed the trunk shut. "My father's dead, Zara. I don't have to keep up appearances anymore." The words hit her like physical blows. Zara gripped the porch railing to keep from falling. "What are you talking about?" "Richard, you're grieving. You're not thinking clearly." Richard laughed, and it was the cruelest sound Zara had ever heard. "I'm thinking clearer than I have in years. Do you want to know the truth, Zara? I never loved you. I married you because my father liked you. He thought you were good for me, and I needed his approval to get ahead in his company." "That's not true," Zara whispered, but even as she said it, memories started clicking into place. The way Richard had always been different around his father. More attentive to her when Harold was watching. The strange conversations that stopped when she entered rooms. "Oh, it's very true. But now Harold's gone and I've got his money. $65 million, Zara. I don't need you anymore. I don't need anyone anymore except..." Richard's smile turned cruel. "Well, except Stephanie." "Stephanie." Richard's secretary. The young blonde who had always been just a little too friendly, just a little too helpful. Zara felt sick. "You're having an affair with Stephanie." "I'm in love with Stephanie. I've been for 2 years now. She's everything you're not, Zara. Young, exciting, grateful. She appreciates what I can give her." 2 years. Zara's mind reeled. 2 years meant the affair had started even before Harold got sick. It meant that while she was caring for her dying father-in-law, holding his hand during chemo treatments, Richard was betraying both of them. "How could you do this to me?" "To your father? He loved me like a daughter." "And that was his mistake," Richard said, opening his car door. "He was too sentimental. Always talking about family, about taking care of people. But I'm not like him, Zara. I take care of myself." Zara watched in stunned silence as Richard got into his car. "Where are you going?" "To Stephanie's apartment. We're flying to Paris tomorrow. Always wanted to see the city of love with someone I actually love." The BMW pulled out of the driveway, leaving Zara standing alone on the porch of what had been their home. The home Harold had helped them buy. The home where she had nursed Harold through his final illness while Richard worked late nights that she now realized weren't work at all. Zara walked back into the house on shaking legs. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. The photos on the mantel showed a happy couple, but it had all been a lie. 7 years of marriage, reduced to a pile of legal papers on her kitchen table. She picked up the divorce documents with numb fingers. Richard was asking for nothing from her, which should have been a relief, but instead it felt like another insult. He didn't want anything from their life together because their life together had meant nothing to him. Her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Stop calling Richard. He's with me now. Stephanie." Even she was involved in this humiliation. Zara sank into a kitchen chair and finally let the tears come. 7 years of her life, gone. The man she had loved, never really hers to begin with. The father-in-law who had truly cared for her, in the ground. But as she cried, something else began to grow inside her. Anger. Harold Thompson had been a good man, a fair man, a man who believed in loyalty and family. Richard had played them both, but Harold was gone and couldn't see his son's true nature anymore. Zara wiped her tears and looked around the house. This wasn't over. Richard might have his father's money, but Harold had been smarter than his son gave him credit for. There had to be more to this story. She was going to find out what really happened. Not because she wanted Richard back, that was impossible now, but because Harold deserved better. And so did she. 2 weeks passed and Richard's cruelty knew no bounds. He didn't just leave Zara, he made sure everyone knew about it. Photos of him and Stephanie appeared on social media almost daily. Expensive restaurants, first-class flights, designer shopping trips. They weren't trying to be discreet. They were flaunting their relationship like a victory banner. Zara sat in Harold's lawyer's office, waiting for Mr. Bradley to finish reviewing the will. The office felt too quiet, too formal. Everything reminded her that Harold was really gone, and with him, the only person who had truly seen her as family. "I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Thompson," Mr. Bradley said, adjusting his glasses. "Harold spoke of you often. He was very fond of you." "Thank you. He was like a father to me." Mr. Bradley nodded. "He mentioned that. Now about the will." He paused, looking uncomfortable. "I have to tell you, this is unusual. Harold came to see me several times in his final months. He seemed worried about something, but he never said exactly what." Zara leaned forward. "Worried about what?" "I'm not sure. But he asked many questions about protecting assets, about making sure his wishes would be followed exactly as he intended." Mr. Bradley shuffled through papers. "According to this will, which was signed 6 months ago, Richard inherits the bulk of Harold's estate. The business, the investments, the properties. It comes to about $65 million. Zara nodded. This wasn't news to her. Richard had made sure she knew exactly how much he was worth now. "However," Mr. Bradley continued, "Harold left some specific bequests to you. The house you and Richard live in, that's yours free and clear. Also a trust fund of $500,000 for your security. Even in death, Harold had tried to take care of her." Zara felt fresh tears threaten. "He was so good to me." "Yes, he was. But Mrs. Thompson, I have to ask you something, and please forgive me if it's too personal. Were you aware of any problems in Harold's relationship with Richard in his final months?" Zara thought back. "Harold seemed sad sometimes. Disappointed, maybe? But I thought it was just because he was sick." "Why do you ask?" Mr. Bradley hesitated. "Because Harold asked me about something called a codicil. That's an addition or change to a will. He seemed to be considering making changes, but he died before we could meet again." Before Zara could ask more questions, her phone rang. Richard's name appeared on the screen. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "What do you want, Richard?" "We need to talk." His voice was sharp, impatient. "Meet me at the house in an hour." "It's my house now, Richard. Harold left it to me." "Yeah, about that. We need to discuss some things." "Just be there, Zara." He hung up before she could respond. Mr. Bradley looked concerned. "Mrs. Thompson, if I may give you some advice? Be very careful. Harold was worried about something in those final months, and now that I see how quickly Richard moved on, I think you should consider getting your own lawyer." An hour later, Zara sat in what had been their living room, watching Richard pace like a caged animal. He looked different. Thinner, more aggressive. Success didn't seem to be agreeing with him. "I need you to sign some papers," he said without preamble. "What kind of papers?" Richard threw a folder on the coffee table. "You need to give up any claim to my father's estate." "I don't have any claim to your father's estate. According to Mr. Bradley, Harold left you almost everything." "Almost everything isn't everything, Zara. You got this house and that trust fund. I need you to sign those over to me." Zara stared at him. "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm asking you to." "That's not a reason, Richard. Harold left those things to me because he wanted me to have them." Richard's face turned red. "My father was sick when he made those decisions. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was thinking clearly enough to leave you $65 million. Look, Zara, I'm trying to be nice here. Stephanie and I want to buy a place in California. We need liquid assets. Then sell one of your other properties." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "Don't you get it? You don't deserve any of this. You were just the help, Zara. Someone to take care of the old man while I built the business. Now he's gone, and you should be grateful I'm offering to buy you out instead of just taking it." Zara stood up slowly. "Get out." "What?" "You heard me. Get out of my house." "Zara, you're making a mistake. I'm being generous here." "No, Richard. You're being greedy. Just like you were greedy enough to cheat on me while your father was dying. Just like you were greedy enough to lie to both of us for years." Richard's mask finally slipped completely. "Fine. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've given up. Stephanie and I are going places, Zara. Big places. And you're going to be stuck here in this old house with your memories." After he left, Zara sat in the silence, thinking about what Mr. Bradley had said. Harold had been worried about something. He had been considering changes to his will. What if there was more to this story than she knew? She walked to Harold's old study, a room Richard had avoided since the funeral. Harold's books were still on the shelves, his papers still in neat stacks on the desk. If there were answers to be found, they would be here. Living alone in the big house felt like swimming in an ocean with no shore in sight. Without Richard's income, Zara faced reality quickly. The trust fund Harold left her was meant to be supplemental, not her only source of money. She needed to find work, and fast. The job market wasn't kind to someone who had spent the last 3 years as a full-time caregiver. Zara had put her marketing career on hold when Harold got sick, choosing family over professional advancement. Now that choice seemed naive. "I'm sorry, but we need someone with recent experience," the hiring manager at the advertising firm said, barely looking at Zara's resume. Taking care of an elderly relative, while admirable, isn't really relevant work experience. Zara left another failed interview and sat in her car, fighting back tears. This was her 5th rejection in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Richard and Stephanie were posting pictures from their European vacation. Designer clothes, 5-star hotels, private jets. The inheritance money flowing like water. Her phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "Changed your mind about those papers yet? Offer expires soon." Zara deleted the message without responding. She wouldn't give Richard the satisfaction of knowing how hard things were for her. At the grocery store, she carefully counted every dollar. Gone were the days of buying whatever she wanted. Now she clipped coupons and bought generic brands. As she reached for the cheaper pasta sauce, she heard familiar laughter from the next aisle. "Oh my God, Richard, you're terrible," Stephanie's voice carried over the shelves. "We can't buy all of those. Where will we put them? Baby, I've got $65 million. We can buy whatever we want. Hell, we can buy the whole store if we feel like it." Zara peeked around the corner and saw them filling a cart with expensive wine and gourmet foods. Stephanie wore a designer dress that probably cost more than Zara's monthly budget. Richard looked relaxed, happy, like a man without a care in the world. "I still can't believe your father left you all that money," Stephanie said. "I mean, I'm glad he did, but didn't he like Zara? I thought he might leave her something significant." Richard shrugged. "He left her some token stuff. The old house, a small trust fund. But he knew who his real child was. Blood is thicker than water, baby." Zara gripped her shopping cart, knuckles white. Token stuff? Harold's house had been his pride and joy. The trust fund wasn't small, it was carefully calculated to provide security. These weren't tokens. They were gifts from a man who had loved her. That night, Zara finally swallowed her pride and called her best friend Nicole. "Girl, I've been waiting for you to call," Nicole said immediately. "I saw Richard's Instagram. Him and that little blonde girl living it up while you're struggling? That ain't right. I don't know what to do, Nick. I can't find work, I'm burning through the trust fund for basic expenses, and Richard keeps pressuring me to sign over everything Harold left me. Don't you dare sign nothing for that man. Harold left you those things for a reason. But what if Richard's right? What if I don't deserve them? Stop that talk right now. You spent 3 years taking care of Harold when Richard was too busy to bother. You earned every bit of what that man left you." After they hung up, Zara went back to Harold's study. She had been going through his papers slowly, looking for anything that might explain his final month's behavior. Most of it was business documents she didn't understand, but tonight she found something different. Hidden in the back of Harold's desk drawer was a small notebook. Not a business ledger or appointment book, but something personal. Zara opened it carefully and saw Harold's handwriting on the first page. "Private thoughts, if something happens to me, I hope Zara finds this. She needs to know the truth." Zara's heart raced as she read the first entry, dated 8 months before Harold's death. "Richard thinks I'm a foolish old man, but I see more than he knows. I've been watching and I don't like what I see. The phone calls that stop when I enter the room. The nights he claims to work late but his secretary doesn't know about. The way he treats Zara when he thinks I'm not looking. I thought I raised him better than this. I thought I taught him about loyalty, about family. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe I gave him too much too easily. Zara deserves better than this. She's the daughter I never had, the family Richard should appreciate but doesn't. If my suspicions are right, she's going to need protection from my own son. And I'm going to make sure she gets it." Zara's hands shook as she read entry after entry. Harold had known about the affair. He had documented Richard's lies, his cruel treatment of Zara when Harold wasn't around. He had seen through his son's act completely. And if Harold had seen through Richard's lies, what else had he planned? Zara thought about Mr. Bradley's words about a codicil, about Harold wanting to make changes to his will. What if Richard wasn't telling the truth about the inheritance? What if there was more to Harold's final wishes than anyone knew? Zara barely slept that night. Harold's notebook painted a picture of a man who saw his son clearly and was deeply disappointed by what he saw. But more importantly, the final entries suggested Harold had been planning something. "I need to be smart about this," one entry read. "If I'm right about Richard, he'll try to cut Zara out completely once I'm gone. I can't let that happen. She's been more of a child to me than he has." The next morning, Zara called Mr. Bradley's office. "I need to see you again," she told his secretary. "It's about Harold Thompson's will. I think there might be more to it than we discussed." Mr. Bradley saw her that afternoon. When Zara showed him Harold's notebook, his face grew serious. "This confirms what I suspected," he said after reading several entries. "Harold was planning something in those final months. He came to see me 3 times, but the last appointment was scheduled for the day after he had his heart attack." "What was he going to tell you?" "I don't know for certain, but he was asking very specific questions about codicils, about protecting beneficiaries from other beneficiaries, about ensuring wishes couldn't be challenged or hidden." Zara leaned forward. "Hidden? Mrs. Thompson, I have to ask you something. Did Richard handle any of his father's affairs in those final weeks? Papers, legal documents, anything like that?" Zara thought back to Harold's final days. "He was in the hospital for a week before he died. Richard said he would take care of getting Harold's affairs in order. He spent a lot of time at Harold's office, going through files." Mr. Bradley's face darkened. "I think we need to investigate this further. Harold was very specific about wanting to see me one more time. He said there was something important he needed to change. But if he died before making changes, then the existing will stands, right?" "Not necessarily. If Harold executed a new will or codicil before he died, even if Richard didn't file it properly, it could still be valid. The question is whether such a document exists." That afternoon, Zara drove to Harold's office building. Richard had cleaned out Harold's office immediately after the funeral, but she knew Harold had been meticulous about keeping records. If he had made changes to his will, there might be evidence somewhere. The building manager recognized Zara. "Mrs. Thompson, I was sorry to hear about Mr. Harold's passing. He was a good man." "Thank you, James. I'm trying to handle some of his final affairs." "Did Richard remove everything from Harold's office?" James nodded. "Cleared it out the day after the funeral. Seemed in a big hurry about it. But you know, Mr. Harold had a private safe in his office. I don't think Richard knew about it." Zara's pulse quickened. "A safe?" "Yeah, behind the bookshelf. Mr. Harold showed it to me once when he needed a witness for some documents. Said it was where he kept his most important papers." James led Zara to Harold's former office. The room was empty now, but the built-in bookshelf remained. Behind a section of books was indeed a small wall safe. "I don't know the combination," James said. "But Mr. Harold mentioned once that it was something personal, something only family would know." Zara thought about everything she knew about Harold. His birthday, his wedding anniversary, the date his business started. Then she remembered something from his notebook he had written about the day he first met her, calling it one of the happiest days of his later life. She tried that date. The safe clicked open. Inside were several documents, including one that made Zara's heart stop. It was labeled Last Will and Testament of Harold Thompson, and dated just 2 weeks before his death. This will was newer than the one Richard had filed with the court. With shaking hands, Zara read the document. This wasn't just a codicil, this was an entirely new will. And according to this will, Richard wasn't the primary beneficiary. Zara was. The will stated that Harold left his business and the majority of his fortune to Zara, with only a modest inheritance for Richard. The reasoning was clearly stated: "My daughter-in-law Zara has shown more loyalty, love, and character than my biological son. She deserves to be rewarded for her dedication to family, while Richard has shown he values money over people." There was more. Harold had documented his suspicions about Richard's affair and his concerns about how Richard would treat Zara after his death. He had even included evidence photos of Richard and Stephanie together, copies of hotel receipts and credit card statements. At the bottom of the will was Harold's signature, properly witnessed and notarized. This was a legal, valid document, and it changed everything. Richard had hidden his father's true wishes. He had stolen Zara's inheritance and left her to struggle while he lived in luxury with his mistress. But now she had proof of his deception. Zara carefully gathered all the documents from the safe. This was more than just about money now. This was about justice for Harold and the truth he had died trying to protect. Zara spread Harold's secret documents across her dining room table, her heart pounding as she realized the full scope of what Harold had uncovered. Along with the new will, there were photographs, financial records, and even audio recordings. Harold had been building a case against his own son. The recordings were the most damaging. Harold had apparently been recording Richard's phone calls in his final months, using the excuse of wanting to preserve family memories. But what he captured instead was evidence of Richard's true character. "Stephanie, baby, just hold on a little longer," Richard's voice came through clearly on one recording. "The old man's getting weaker. Once he's gone, we'll have everything we've ever wanted." "But what about Zara?" Stephanie's voice was equally clear. "What about her? She's nobody. Once I inherit, I'll divorce her and we can start our real life together. Paris, baby. Just like we planned." Zara stopped the recording, her hands shaking. Harold had known about Richard's plans all along. He had heard his son talking about his death like it was just an inconvenience standing in the way of his happiness. Another recording was even worse. This one was Richard talking to someone else, possibly a friend. "The funny thing is, Zara actually thinks I love her. She's been taking care of my dad for 3 years, thinking she's doing it for family. Really, she's just making it easier for me to inherit everything. While she's playing nurse, I'm building my relationship with Stephanie and planning our future. What if your dad figures it out?" Richard laughed on the recording. "He won't. He's too sick, too trusting. He thinks I'm the devoted son. By the time he realizes what's happening, if he ever does, it'll be too late." But Harold had figured it out. The notebook entries showed he had been devastated by his son's betrayal, but determined to protect Zara from it. "I built this business for my family," one entry read. "I wanted to leave something good behind, something that would take care of the people I love." Richard sees it as just money to be spent on selfish pleasures. Zara sees it as responsibility, as a way to help others. "She's the one who deserves to carry on my legacy." Zara found more evidence of Harold's planning. He had been secretly consulting with a different lawyer, one Richard didn't know about. Mr. Peterson, according to the documents, had helped Harold create the new will and had copies of everything in his own files. But the most touching discovery was a letter Harold had written to Zara, sealed and marked, to be opened only if Richard inherits instead of you. "My dear Zara," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means something went wrong with my plans. It means Richard found a way to hide my true will and steal what I wanted you to have. First, know that you were never just a daughter-in-law to me. You were the daughter I always wished for. Your kindness, your strength, your ability to see good in people, these are gifts that Richard never possessed. I know you will be tempted to give up, to accept Richard's version of events. Don't. Fight for what is right. Fight for the truth. You deserve so much more than the crumbs my son is willing to give you. The business I built was never about money. It was about helping people, about building something that would last. Richard sees it as a pile of cash to be spent. You understand that it's a responsibility, a chance to make the world better. If you are reading this, then the evidence you need is in this safe. Take it to Mr. Peterson. His contact information is enclosed. He knows about the real will. He'll help you fight. Don't let Richard win, Zara. Not because of the money, but because letting him win means letting cruelty triumph over kindness. It means letting a good man's final wishes be trampled by a selfish son. You are stronger than you know. You are better than he deserves. And you are loved even now, even by someone who can't be there to protect you anymore. Fight for justice, my dear. Fight for truth. And know that I believe in you completely. With all my love, Harold." Tears streamed down Zara's face as she finished the letter. Harold had known this might happen. He had prepared for Richard's betrayal as best he could. Now it was up to her to finish what Harold had started. She called the number Harold had provided for Mr. Peterson. His secretary scheduled an emergency meeting for the next morning. That night, Zara couldn't eat or sleep. She kept thinking about all the times Richard had comforted her during Harold's illness, all the moments she had believed he truly cared. It had all been an act. Worse, it had been a calculated performance designed to fool Harold while Richard planned to abandon her the moment Harold died. But Harold had seen through it all. He had protected her the only way he could, by documenting the truth and ensuring she would have the means to fight back. As she prepared for bed, Zara's phone buzzed with another text from Richard. "Last chance, Zara. Sign the papers or things get difficult for you." This time, instead of deleting the message, Zara screenshotted. It would be more evidence of Richard's attempts to steal what wasn't rightfully his. Tomorrow she would begin fighting back. Not just for the money, but for Harold's memory and for the truth he had died protecting. Mr. Peterson's office was smaller than Mr. Bradley's, but it felt warmer somehow. The elderly lawyer greeted Zara with genuine sympathy and immediately understood why she was there. "I've been expecting you," he said as he looked through the documents Zara brought. Harold told me that if anything happened to him, you might eventually find your way here. So you knew about the real will? I helped him write it. Harold was very clear about his intentions, Mrs. Thompson. He wanted to make sure you were provided for, and he had serious concerns about his son's character. Mr. Peterson pulled out a thick file. Harold came to see me after he overheard that first phone conversation between Richard and his girlfriend. He was devastated, but he was also determined to do the right thing. Why didn't he just confront Richard directly? He considered it, but he was afraid Richard would simply become better at hiding his true nature. Harold wanted to see how far his son would go, how cruel he was willing to be. Unfortunately, Richard exceeded even his worst fears. Mr. Peterson showed Zara copies of everything: the will, the recordings, the documented evidence of Richard's affair, and his plans to abandon Zara immediately after Harold's death. The question now, Mr. Peterson said, is whether you want to fight this. It won't be easy. Richard has possession of significant assets, and he'll fight hard to keep them. He'll probably claim his father was mentally incompetent or that you somehow coerced Harold into changing his will. Zara thought about Harold's letter, about his request that she fight for justice. What would I be fighting for exactly? Mr. Peterson consulted his notes. According to Harold's true will, you inherit controlling interest in Thompson Industries, the real estate portfolio, and approximately $45 million in various investments. Richard would receive $5 million and the option to remain as an employee of the company if he demonstrates proper behavior. $45 million? Harold built a very successful business, Mrs. Thompson. He wanted to ensure you had the resources to continue his philanthropic work and to never have to depend on anyone who might treat you poorly. The number was staggering, but what struck Zara more was Harold's intention. He hadn't just wanted to leave her money. He had wanted to give her power, independence, and the ability to carry on his values. There's something else, Mr. Peterson continued. Harold was very concerned about what Richard might do to you financially during the divorce. He included specific instructions that if Richard tried to leave you with nothing or pressured you to sign away your rights, that would be grounds for additional penalties against Richard's inheritance. Zara thought about Richard's recent demands that she sign over the house and trust fund. He's been pressuring me to give up everything Harold left me in the original will. That's exactly what Harold predicted would happen. And according to these documents, every text message, every demand, every threat reduces Richard's inheritance further. Mr. Peterson showed Zara a clause in the will she had missed. It stated that if Richard engaged in attempts to defraud, threaten, or financially abuse Zara Thompson, his inheritance would be reduced to $1 million, with the rest going to charity. Harold really thought of everything, didn't he? He loved you very much, Mrs. Thompson. He also understood his son better than Richard realized. That afternoon, Mr. Peterson filed the correct will with the probate court and served Richard with notice that the estate was being contested. Zara knew it was only a matter of time before Richard's reaction would be explosive. She didn't have to wait long. Her phone rang an hour after she got home. What the hell do you think you're doing? Richard's voice was furious. I'm making sure your father's real wishes are honored, Zara said calmly. Real wishes? Zara, you're delusional. My father left me his estate. We went over this with the lawyer. We went over it with your lawyer, Richard. But Harold had his own lawyer. And his own will. There was silence on the other end of the line. When Richard spoke again, his voice was different. Dangerous. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you need to stop. You're embarrassing yourself. The only person who should be embarrassed is you. Harold knew about Stephanie, Richard. He knew about all of it. Another long pause. You're lying. Harold recorded your phone calls. He documented everything. He knew you were planning to leave me the moment he died, and he made sure I would be protected from you. That's impossible. The old man barely knew how to use his cell phone. The old man was smarter than you gave him credit for. He saw right through you, Richard. He knew what kind of person you really are. Richard's voice turned cold. Listen to me very carefully, Zara. You can't win this fight. I have lawyers, I have money, I have connections. You have nothing. Drop this nonsense now and I might let you keep the house. I don't need you to let me keep anything, Richard. And I'm not dropping anything. You're making a mistake. A big one. Zara hung up and immediately called Mr. Peterson to report the threatening phone call. He advised her to document everything and to be prepared for Richard to escalate his tactics. That evening, Zara sat in Harold's study, looking through more of his personal papers. She found photo albums filled with pictures of her and Harold together at company picnics, charity events, family dinners. In many of them, Richard was absent, claiming work commitments that she now knew were lies. She also found Harold's final business plan, written in his last months. It outlined his vision for Thompson Industries as a force for good in the community, funding scholarships, supporting local businesses, creating jobs. Richard had never shown any interest in these plans. To him, the business was just a source of income. As she read Harold's hopes for the company's future, Zara realized this was about more than just money or revenge. This was about honoring a good man's legacy and making sure his dreams didn't die with him. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "Drop the lawsuit or you'll regret it." Instead of fear, Zara felt determination. Richard was showing his true colors now, and she was going to make sure everyone could see them. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal activity. Mr. Peterson worked tirelessly to present Harold's real will to the court, while Richard hired a team of expensive lawyers to contest it. Richard's strategy was predictable. He claimed Harold had been mentally incompetent in his final months and that Zara had manipulated a sick old man into changing his will. He painted her as a gold digger who had preyed on Harold's loneliness and confusion. But Harold had anticipated this too. His medical records showed he had been mentally sharp until the day he died. His own doctor testified that Harold had specifically asked about his mental competency, wanting to ensure any legal documents he signed would be unquestionable. Mr. Thompson was very concerned about being seen as mentally capable, Dr. Williams testified. He even requested cognitive tests to document his mental state. He said he was making important decisions and wanted to be sure they couldn't be challenged later. The recordings Harold had made were devastating to Richard's case. Playing them in court, listening to Richard discuss his father's death as an inconvenience and his wife as someone to be discarded, made even the judge visibly uncomfortable. This recording was made 3 months before Harold Thompson's death, Mr. Peterson told the court. It clearly shows that Mr. Richard Thompson was planning to abandon his wife immediately after his inheritance, and that he viewed his father's illness as an opportunity rather than a tragedy. Richard's lawyer tried to argue that the recordings were made without consent and shouldn't be admissible, but since they were made by Harold in his own home and office, they were perfectly legal. The evidence of Richard's affair was equally damaging. Credit card records showed expensive gifts and hotel rooms paid for during the time Richard should have been caring for his dying father. Instead of being at Harold's bedside, Richard was with Stephanie at luxury resorts. While Mrs. Thompson was providing round-the-clock care for Harold Thompson, Mr. Peterson argued, his son was spending company money on his extramarital affair. This shows a pattern of selfishness and betrayal that Harold Thompson clearly recognized and wanted to protect his daughter-in-law from. Richard took the stand in his own defense, but it was a disaster. Under cross-examination, he couldn't explain away the recordings or the evidence of his affair. When asked why he had moved in with Stephanie immediately after his father's funeral, he stumbled over his words. "I was grieving," he claimed. "I wasn't thinking clearly." But according to these recordings, you had been planning this move for months, Mr. Peterson pointed out. This wasn't a grief reaction. This was a calculated plan you executed the moment your father died. That's not. The recordings are out of context. What context makes it acceptable to refer to your father's death as finally getting everything we wanted? Richard had no answer. The most powerful moment came when Mr. Peterson read Harold's letter to Zara in court. The letter clearly showed Harold's state of mind and his reasons for changing his will. It demonstrated his love for Zara and his disappointment in his son. Harold Thompson wasn't a confused old man, Mr. Peterson told the jury. He was a successful businessman who saw his son's true character and made a conscious decision to protect the woman who had been more of a child to him than his biological son. Richard's lawyers tried to paint Zara as a manipulative woman who had turned Harold against his son, but the evidence didn't support their claims. Witnesses testified about Zara's devoted care for Harold and Richard's frequent absences. Harold's business partners spoke about his disappointment in Richard's lack of interest in the company's charitable work. Zara Thompson embodied everything Harold Thompson valued, said James Monroe, Harold's longtime business partner. Loyalty, kindness, dedication to family. Richard Thompson embodied everything Harold feared his son might become: selfish, disloyal, focused only on money. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Richard grew more desperate as each day passed, his lawyers running out of strategies to counter the overwhelming evidence against him. On the final day, Zara testified about her relationship with Harold and her shock at discovering Richard's betrayal. She spoke simply and honestly about the man who had treated her like a daughter and about her commitment to honoring his memory. Harold wasn't just my father-in-law, she told the court. He was my family. He taught me about integrity, about using success to help others, about the difference between earning something and just taking it. I don't want his money because I'm greedy. I want to fulfill his vision, to use what he built to help people the way he always intended. When the judge delivered the verdict, Richard's face went white. The court upheld Harold's true will in its entirety. Zara was awarded $45 million, controlling interest in Thompson Industries, and the real estate portfolio. Richard's inheritance was reduced to $1 million due to his attempts to defraud Zara and his pattern of threats and intimidation. Harold Thompson was clearly competent when he made this will, the judge stated. The evidence shows he had good reasons for his decisions and that he took great care to ensure his wishes would be carried out. This court will not allow those wishes to be subverted by fraud or intimidation. As they left the courthouse, Richard tried one last time to approach Zara. Zara, please. We can work something out. We were married for 7 years. That has to count for something. Zara looked at him with complete calm. It did count for something, Richard. It counted enough for Harold to want to protect me from you. She walked away, leaving Richard standing alone on the courthouse steps while Stephanie waited nervously by his car. The man who had thought he was so clever, who had played his father and wife for fools, had been outsmarted by the old man he'd underestimated. The aftermath of the court decision was swift and brutal for Richard. Within days of losing the case, his world began to crumble in ways he hadn't anticipated. Stephanie was the first to abandon ship. Zara heard about it from Nicole, who had been keeping tabs on the social media drama. Girl, you should see this, Nicole said, showing Zara her phone. That little blonde posted a statement on Instagram saying she's reassessing her relationship priorities and needs space to think. She unfollowed Richard and deleted all their photos together. Zara wasn't surprised. Stephanie had been attracted to Richard's wealth, not to Richard himself. With only $1 million left instead of $65 million, and with legal fees mounting, Richard was no longer the catch he had appeared to be. The business consequences were even worse. Thompson Industries' board of directors, who had been waiting to see the outcome of the will contest, immediately recognized Zara as the new majority owner. Richard's position as CEO was terminated, and several key clients who had been uncomfortable with his leadership style canceled their contracts. We never felt right about Richard's approach, James Monroe explained to Zara during her first board meeting. Harold built this company on relationships and trust. Richard saw it as just a way to make money quickly. We're relieved to have someone who understands Harold's vision. Richard tried to fight his termination, but as the minority shareholder, he had no legal standing. The board voted unanimously to remove him from all leadership positions. Within a month, Richard went from being a millionaire CEO to being unemployed and facing massive legal bills. His expensive lifestyle, which he had maintained expecting to inherit much more, became unsustainable overnight. The house he and Stephanie had been renting in the expensive part of town was the first to go. Then the luxury cars were repossessed. Richard's social media presence, which had been all about flaunting his wealth, went silent. Meanwhile, Zara was discovering what it meant to truly honor Harold's memory. She threw herself into understanding Thompson Industries and implementing Harold's vision for the company's future. She established the Harold Thompson Foundation, dedicated to providing scholarships for students from low-income families. She expanded the company's charitable giving and created job training programs in underserved communities. Everything Harold had dreamed of, she began to make real. The work was challenging but fulfilling. For the first time since Harold's death, Zara felt like she had purpose beyond just surviving Richard's betrayal. 3 months after the trial, Richard showed up at Zara's office. Security called to ask if she wanted to see him, and curiosity made her agree to a brief meeting. The man who walked into her office was barely recognizable. Richard looked thin, tired, and desperate. His expensive clothes had been replaced with off-the-rack basics, and his confident swagger was gone. "Zara, I need your help," he said without preamble. "Hello, Richard. You look different. Stephanie left me. Did you know that? Just packed up and moved in with some investment banker she met at a party. Didn't even say goodbye." Zara felt no satisfaction in his pain, just a distant kind of pity. "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not. But that's okay. I deserve this." Richard slumped in the chair across from her desk. "I've lost everything, Zara. The business, Stephanie, my reputation. I can't even get a job interview anywhere in this city. What do you want from me, Richard?" "I want to explain. I want to tell you why I did what I did. I already know why you did it. Harold's recordings made that very clear. Richard winced. Those recordings? I was angry when I made them. I was frustrated with my father, with feeling like I was never good enough for him. But I never meant for things to go as far as they did. You meant every word, Richard. You planned to abandon me the moment Harold died. You had an affair for 2 years while I was caring for your dying father. You tried to steal my inheritance and leave me with nothing. I know all of that. And I know you have no reason to help me. But I'm asking anyway. Zara studied her ex-husband's face. There was genuine desperation there, but also something else. For the first time since she'd known him, Richard looked like he might actually understand what he had lost. Help you how? I need a job. Any job. I'll start at the bottom, I'll do whatever you need. I just need a chance to prove I can be better than I was. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Harold had taught her about forgiveness, about giving people chances to redeem themselves. But Harold had also taught her about the difference between being kind and being foolish. Richard, even if I were willing to give you a job, which I'm not sure I am, how do I know you wouldn't just be playing another game? How do I know this isn't just another performance designed to get you what you want? You don't, Richard admitted. I've lied to you so many times that I can't expect you to trust me now. But I'm not the same person who walked out on you after the funeral. Losing everything has taught me things I should have learned years ago. Such as what it means to have people you care about disappear when things get hard. Such as what it's like to realize that everything you thought mattered was just surface stuff that could disappear overnight. Such as what it feels like to know that you hurt the one person who truly loved you. Zara felt a flicker of something, not forgiveness exactly, but maybe understanding. Richard, I appreciate that you're having revelations about your behavior. But Harold is dead. The damage is done. You can't undo the pain you caused him or the years of lies you told me. I know that. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm asking you to let me try to do better. Zara thought about what Harold would have wanted. He had believed in redemption, in giving people chances to change. But he had also been clear about protecting herself from people who would take advantage of her kindness. I'll think about it, she said finally. But Richard, even if I decide to help you, it won't be because we have history. It won't be because I forgive you. It will be because Harold believed people could change if they truly wanted to. Richard nodded. That's more than I deserve. After he left, Zara sat in her office thinking about second chances and justice, about the difference between being merciful and being wise. Harold had left her more than money, he had left her the responsibility of deciding what his legacy would be. 6 months after the trial, Zara's life had transformed completely. Thompson Industries was thriving under her leadership. The Harold Thompson Foundation was making real differences in people's lives, and she had found a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before. She was reviewing scholarship applications in her office when her assistant knocked on the door. Mrs. Thompson, there's someone here to see you. Adrian Mitchell from Mitchell Architecture. He says you have an appointment about the new community center project. Zara looked at her calendar. She had completely forgotten about the meeting. The foundation was funding a new community center in one of the city's underserved neighborhoods, and she needed an architect who understood the project's mission. Adrian Mitchell walked into her office, and Zara was immediately struck by his presence. He was tall and confident, with kind eyes and an easy smile. More importantly, the portfolio he carried showed buildings that were both beautiful and functional, designed clearly with communities in mind rather than just profit. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for seeing me. I've been following the work your foundation is doing, and I have to say, it's exactly the kind of project I got into architecture to build. As they discussed the community center, Zara found herself genuinely engaged in a way she hadn't been with anyone in a long time. Adrian asked thoughtful questions about who would use the building and how it could best serve the community's needs. Too many architects design buildings to impress other architects, he said. But the best buildings are the ones that make life better for the people who use them every day. It was something Harold would have said. The meeting ran long, stretching into the afternoon as they discussed not just the community center but the foundation's other projects. Adrian had ideas for affordable housing, for spaces that could bring communities together, for architecture as a tool for social change. Would you like to continue this conversation over dinner? Adrian asked as they were wrapping up. I mean, to discuss the project, of course. Zara smiled. Of course. To discuss the project. That dinner led to others. Adrian was everything Richard had never been, genuinely interested in her thoughts and opinions, supportive of her work, honest about his own strengths and weaknesses. He had built his firm slowly and carefully, choosing projects based on their value to communities rather than just their profitability. I've been following your story, he admitted during their third dinner. Not the gossip and drama but the real story. What you've done with your father-in-law's legacy, how you've turned tragedy into something positive. It's inspiring. Harold deserves the credit. I'm just trying to finish what he started. No, you're doing much more than that. You're creating something new, something that reflects your own values as much as his. For the first time since Harold's death, Zara felt like someone truly saw her not as a victim of Richard's betrayal, not as a lucky recipient of an inheritance, but as someone capable of creating meaningful change in the world. Their relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared values. Adrian was in no hurry, understanding that Zara needed time to trust again. He showed up consistently, supported her work without trying to take credit for it, and never made her feel like she needed to be anything other than herself. Meanwhile, Richard had taken a job as a sales associate at a mid-level real estate firm. Zara had decided not to hire him at Thompson Industries. The risk to her employees and her own peace of mind was too great, but she had used her connections to help him find work elsewhere. It's not about Richard, she had explained to Nicole. It's about being the person Harold raised me to be. He believed in second chances, even for people who didn't deserve them. Richard had accepted the job gratefully and seemed to be making a genuine effort to rebuild his life. He lived in a small apartment, drove a used car, and by all accounts was working hard and treating his colleagues with respect. One evening, as Zara and Adrian walked through the construction site of the nearly completed community center, her phone rang. It was Richard. Zara, I wanted to thank you again for helping me get this job. And I wanted you to know. I saw the article about the community center in the newspaper. Harold would be proud of what you're doing. It was the first time Richard had mentioned his father positively since Harold's death. Thank you, Richard. That means something coming from you. I know I don't have the right to ask, but are you happy? You sound different. Better. Zara looked at Adrian, who was examining the building's framework with the eye of someone who truly cared about quality and purpose. Yes, Richard. I'm happy. Good. You deserve that. You deserved it all along. After they hung up, Adrian put his arm around Zara's shoulders as they looked at the building that would soon serve hundreds of families in the community. Everything okay? He asked. More than okay, Zara replied. For the first time in years, everything feels exactly as it should be. The community center was scheduled to open in 2 months, with Harold's name prominently displayed at the entrance. It would be the first of many projects that would carry his memory forward, not just as a successful businessman, but as a man who believed in using success to lift others up. As they drove home that night, Zara reflected on how much her life had changed. A year ago, she had been a woman whose husband had abandoned her, who had been struggling just to survive. Now she was running a successful company, leading meaningful charitable work, and building a relationship with someone who valued her for who she truly was. Harold had given her more than money. He had given her the chance to discover her own strength, her own purpose, and her own worth. 1 year later, Zara stood at the podium of the grand ballroom, looking out at 500 guests gathered for the Harold Thompson Foundation's first annual gala. The event had raised over $2 million for scholarships and community programs, exceeding all expectations. Harold Thompson believed that success meant nothing if it wasn't shared, she told the crowd. Tonight, we're not just honoring his memory. We're proving that his vision for a better world is alive and growing. The applause was thunderous. In the audience, Zara could see Adrian beaming with pride, her friend Nicole wiping away tears, and many of the scholarship recipients Harold's foundation had already helped. As the evening continued, Zara mingled with donors and community leaders, feeling a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge or proving anyone wrong. This was about building something positive, something lasting. She was talking with a group of college students who had received foundation scholarships when she noticed a familiar figure near the back of the room. Richard stood by himself, wearing a simple black suit that looked like it had come from a department store rather than a designer boutique. After her conversation with the students ended, Zara made her way over to him. Richard, I'm surprised to see you here. I bought a ticket, he said quickly. I know I probably shouldn't have come, but I wanted to see what you'd built. I wanted to see Harold's legacy in action. Zara studied her ex-husband's face. He looked older, more tired, but also somehow more genuine than she remembered him being during their marriage. How are you doing? Better than I deserve to be doing, Richard said honestly. I'm not rich anymore, I'm not powerful anymore, but I'm learning to be a decent person. It's harder work than I expected, but it's the first work that's ever felt meaningful. I'm glad to hear that. Zara, I need to say something and then I'll leave you alone. I know I can never undo what I did to you or to my father. I know I can never earn forgiveness for the way I treated both of you. But seeing all this," he gestured around the room, "seeing what you've accomplished, seeing how you've honored his memory, it makes me understand what I threw away. Richard, let me finish. I had everything. I had a wife who loved me, a father who believed in me, a business built on real values. And I threw it all away because I was too selfish and too stupid to recognize what I had. But you took tragedy and turned it into triumph. You took pain and turned it into purpose." Before Zara could respond, Richard continued, "I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking for forgiveness or friendship or another chance. I just wanted you to know that Harold was right about you. He saw something in you that I was too blind to see. And I'm sorry I was such a fool." Richard turned to leave, but Zara stopped him. "Richard, wait." He turned back, hope and fear warring on his face. "Harold taught me that holding on to anger hurts the person carrying it more than anyone else. I can't forget what you did, and I can't pretend our marriage was real when I know it wasn't. But I can let go of the hatred. For my sake, not yours." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for that. And Zara? The man over there by the scholarship display, the one who keeps looking over here with concern, is he important to you?" Zara looked across the room at Adrian, who was indeed watching their conversation with protective attention. "Yes, he is." "Good. You deserve someone who sees your worth." Richard paused. "Harold would have liked him, wouldn't he?" "Yes," Zara said softly. "Harold would have loved him." After Richard left, Adrian came over to join Zara. "Everything okay?" he asked, putting a gentle hand on her back. "Everything's perfect," Zara replied, and she meant it. As the evening wound down, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. A year ago, she had been a woman destroyed by betrayal, struggling just to survive. Tonight, she was surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by her work, standing next to a man who loved her genuinely, leading an organization that was making real differences in the world. The final speaker of the evening was Dr. Patricia Williams, the first recipient of a Harold Thompson Foundation scholarship. She was now in her second year of medical school, planning to return to her underserved community as a family doctor. "A year ago, I thought college was impossible for someone like me," she told the crowd. "My family didn't have money, I didn't have connections, and I didn't have hope. But Harold Thompson's legacy, carried forward by Mrs. Zara Thompson, gave me not just financial support, but something even more valuable, the belief that my dreams mattered." As Dr. Williams spoke about her plans to open a free clinic in her hometown, Zara felt Harold's presence as if he were standing right beside her. This was what he had wanted, not just to make money but to make a difference. Not just to build wealth but to build hope. The gala ended near midnight, but Zara felt energized rather than tired. She and Adrian walked to her car together, the city lights twinkling around them. "You know," Adrian said, "I think tonight was the moment when you stopped being Harold's successor and became your own leader." "What do you mean?" "I mean that Foundation isn't just carrying on his work anymore. It's doing things he never could have imagined, reaching people in ways he never thought of. You've taken his foundation and made it yours." As they drove home, Zara thought about Harold's letter, about his belief that she would fight for justice and truth. She had fought and she had won. But more than that, she had built something beautiful from the ashes of her old life. Richard had $65 million for a few months and had wasted it on selfish pleasures. Zara had $45 million and had turned it into hope for hundreds of people, into buildings that would serve communities for decades, into scholarship programs that would continue long after she was gone. Justice, Zara realized, wasn't just about getting what you deserved. It was about making sure that goodness triumphed over selfishness, that love proved stronger than greed, and that the people who tried to build others up ultimately succeeded over those who tried to tear others down. Harold had been right about Richard. But more importantly, he had been right about her. She was stronger than she had known, better than she had believed, and capable of turning even the worst betrayal into something beautiful. As she fell asleep that night, Zara smiled, thinking about tomorrow. There were more community centers to build, more scholarships to award, more lives to change. And there was Adrian, who had proven that not all men were like Richard, that real love meant supporting someone's dreams rather than crushing them. A year ago, Richard had thought he was getting everything he wanted by abandoning her. Instead, he had given her the greatest gift possible, the chance to discover who she really was when she wasn't trying to please someone who didn't deserve her love. Harold had protected her from Richard's cruelty. But more than that, He had empowered her to build a life that was better than anything she could have imagined when she was still trying to save a marriage that had been built on lies. The best revenge, Zara had learned, wasn't hurting the people who hurt you. It was building a life so beautiful, so meaningful, so full of genuine love and purpose, that their betrayal became just a small, forgettable chapter in a much larger story of triumph.